Teachers of Reddit. What was the most obvious? Your parents clearly did the assignment. I taught elementary art class for a few years, and a lot of the time, we would have crossover lessons with certain subjects. One year, we had the second graders do a project for their unit on Native Americans, where they had to make dioramas of a type of Native American house of their choosing, and then write a little 2-paragraph essay on who lived in that style of house and why it was built that way. Most kids made typists or wigwams out of construction paper and birch bark and paper towel rolls. We had a few students who were clearly getting help from their parents, but it was obvious the kids had input and done the essay. Standard stuff. Then we had a kid come in with, I shit you not, a completely accurate model of Cliff Palace, Colorado. It was stunning. Turns out his dad was a sculptor, and his mom worked at our local museum as a restoration expert. My brother is special needs, so when he had to make a castle, he drew it out on paper, but I built it. It looked great. I was 17 and into D&D. He obviously didn't do it, but the teacher sent it to the country fair as best in class. I always felt so bad about that. When the student came in crying while holding the project and asked what happened, she announced that she was frustrated that her mom did the whole project. It looked nothing like how she wanted it to, and wasn't allowed to really do anything on it. This wasn't the first assignment that came in from this student that was clearly done by the mom, but the student finally had enough of having her education taken from her. 6th grade research project that ended up in a 3-page paper. One kid turned in a 10-page paper, and it definitely wasn't a bad attempt at plagiarism. It kind of felt like the mom was missing her own academic years. I strongly suspect this is the cause of most parents doing their children's projects. They're missing out on learning, not stimulated enough by their work/hobby life, and or never had a chance to do the project/assignments given to their children. I'd gladly have interested parents come in and do their own projects in class while their kids did them too, if it were permitted. It's never too late to learn. I just wish they'd let their kids do their learning on their own more often. English is a foreign language teacher here. During lockdown last year, a student sent in a test that had much better work than he usually did. When I googled his words, sure enough, he had copied it by matching the first part of sentences from one source to the second part of sentences from another source. It did at least make sense, but it was still not his work. When I confronted him about cheating, he said, I don't think I cheated, because my mom helped me with it, and she wouldn't cheat. I knew a guy in college who was from Ukraine and grew up speaking Russian, but was also perfectly fluent in English. He would plagiarize constantly by copying Russian academic papers and then translating them. It took me considerable more work to catch him, more work than any professor ever felt like putting in. This discovery was a collaboration between me and another teacher. The student in question submitted an assignment that showed no cohesion or ability to connect ideas. Told me about how to make detergent from kiwi fruit in 500 words. The task was a 1500 word assignment on a DNA extraction experiment, and then the same week submitted an A standard assignment to their psychology teacher with excellent flow, arguments, and great conceptual synthesis. I had a student hand in an assignment on Google Docs. Most was written by his dad. How did I know? His dad was logged in while writing it, so it showed up on the edit history. The worst part is the dad is one of the assistant principals. Classmate of mine read out her homework to the class. Structural analysis of a small town in our area. She kept talking about the Jerfa structure. Turns out her mom had written the entire thing in cursive, and the girl was unaware of the word infrastructure. 12-year-old kid brings in beautiful galleon. All the other kids' galleons look like they are cut out of styrofoam using a butter knife, or some strange 50-50 amalgamation of cardboard and hot glue. And then there's this kid with a wooden galleon, complete with rigging, cloth sails, a stand. After talking to him, I finally get him to admit that his parents had gone to a shop and ordered a custom-made ship. What the heck? Lol. Funny enough, I've been building those little ships my whole life. First model I finished around 4, looked like crap in hindsight, but been building since. We had a small show and tell in 7th grade, and I brought in a model of the Cuddy Sark and the Santa Maria, and everyone thought I had bought a store display or something. But nope, spent a month on each busting my ass and gluing my fingers together to build them. So much fun. Currently in college and working on a turtle ship. I think soaking the wood slats so you can warp them to the hull is the most satisfying part when it comes together. But fuck rigging. Not a teacher, but in middle school, I procrastinated as most kids do and forgot about a project to make a brochure about a country. My parents stayed up all night helping me, doing the majority of it. Years later, underclassmen would tell me the same teacher would pull my project out every year and tell them what hard work looks like. Middle school science project. Kid came in with a crude internal combustion engine, having previously failed science 3 quarters in a row. I think some people are just naturally good at this stuff though. I had a friend growing up who got horrible grades and was in trouble all the time at school. He would ask for me to play with his go-kart at their house, and I always had to tell him no because to him playing with the go-kart was taking it apart and putting it back together again. I wanted to drive the thing. He ended up failing out of high school and went on to a trade school and did much better. Was below average in school too. Built my first electrical engine with the 1415 in my gram's old workshop room in the cellar. Barely made my high school diploma and then continued to study physics and worked on particle accelerators. I literally had to repeat 10th class due to failing physics and math. Turns out it was more of a motivational problem. Obligatory, not a teacher, but in 3rd grade, we had to build the classic volcano that erupts bicarb soda lava. I did the entire thing myself, refusing help from my parents. I walked into class so proud of what I'd made, and then saw everyone else clearly made by their parents. One kid's even had fake smoke coming out of his. Like, bro, we're 7 years old, it's okay. The email from my parents. I worked very hard on this essay, and I think you'll agree that if X had attempted it, it would have been of a much lower standard. Please score on the quality of the response, not the authorship. No? Not a teacher, but I remember my classmate got caught faking his science fair project. In all his pictures, only the hands could be seen through the experiment. What gave it away was that the hands were white with tattoos on the left hand, while the kid in question was African American. It was hilarious watching him defend himself. I'm an ESL teacher. The homework was to draw the items that were written, to check understanding, and the class was full of 5-year-olds. Once kid work was completed with some perfectly drawn pictures in the style of the textbook they used, I straight up asked the kid if, in their native language, if they drew it. They said no and proceeded to do some shockingly bad tracing of the alphabet in class. As a student, I remember in woodworking that we have to make a foldable chair that we have to work on the whole semester. In the end, mine was a fucking safety hazard, aka it can be set upon, but there's like nails ready to skewer your ass. Scared to submit that, I literally bought new materials outside class and let my dad do it. Teacher was shocked on how good it was and questioned my authenticity. In the end, I confessed that it was my dad, but my teacher's ego was so high, probably thinking he can humiliate me in front of the class, so he told me to bring the original chair. He sat on it and punctured his ass and fell because the chair did not support his weight. I got suspended, not because I hurt him, but because I was cheating. LMAO. I'm really not sure what point he was trying to prove by sitting in your first attempt. Even without seeing the nails, surely he realized there was a reasonable risk the chair would collapse. That teacher sounds like a dumb arse. It's a lot harder to tell when the parents are doing the projects as the kids get older. Kids from year 7 through 10, it's generally very easy to pick up. As a teacher, you're pretty aware of their reading and writing level. So when they write things light years beyond their comprehension, it's so easy to pick up. But the older kids in year 11 through 12 are harder to pick up because by this time they generally got really decent writing skills and their work turns from high school rubbish to genuine amateur academic papers really quick. But one tip I have is just to read their paper and give them a quick fire on the spot question and ask them what a word means. If they don't know it, They get all embarrassed and generally confess to it. Lol. I can't believe at 18, I taught kids who made their parents do their work. Now I'm thinking back to some conversations I had with teachers in high school and wondering if they were testing me. I didn't cheat, by the way. I occasionally had a parent proofread a paper, but I didn't let them rewrite it. I am well read though, and a decent writer. The assignment was to draw your family tree. It's grade 4, so as far back as you can go, just to understand the concept might be 3 or 4 generations. Now the student had a very unique name. It was over 10 letters long, and he, as yet, had not mastered writing it down. This was due to being removed from school for weeks on end to vacation. He was also removed/sick for any and all testing. I had absolutely no support from the principal to get this kid an education. The parents were rich and influential. The project was handed in and the student really wowed us. The tree was so lifelike, he had been able to trace back 9 generations. This kid can't write his own name, but he can do calligraphy. He can also sign his mother's name to the bottom of the print. Not a teacher, but I remember one. An assignment in a language class involved audio recordings, not like a video, but something pre-recorded at home to present to the class. One student obviously had her mother speak the entire thing. In one bit, you could actually hear her voice in the background while her mom was talking into the mic. Not a teacher, but in 9th grade we were assigned a 10-page essay about life during the Vietnam War. I went to a prep school and was taking way too many honors classes, extracurriculars, etc. I broke down 3 days before the essay was due and asked my mom to help me. She wrote the most beautiful essay I've ever read. She used lyrics from Bye Bye Miss American Pie and wove them into her real-life experiences. My teacher was moved to tears when she read it. I honestly have no idea how she thought it was the work of a 9th grader, but I was super grateful for her A+. According to my cousin, the same teacher is still using the paper as her best example of student work, almost 12 years later. His dad accidentally wrote his own name on the paper. I tortured the kid for a week by calling him by his dad's name. Ah, good times. Not a teacher, but when I was at school, we had a class called Home Tech. Cooking, sewing, etc. F knows why, but anyways, we had to make a peg bag from strips of material and put it together using a sewing machine. I wasn't doing that, so I asked my mom to do it for me with my material. She did, and she was chuffed at her final product. So I took it back to school and my teacher gave me a D for my mom's peg bag, and she's still fuming over it. TLDR, mom did my sewing assignment and teacher said it was crap. The kids were allowed to bring an index card with their notes on it to the midterm exam. One boy brought in a card with the neatest, tiniest handwriting ever. Clearly not his work. He got an 11% on the exam. The information on the index card was all correct. It was just that the kid didn't do 1 ounce of studying, so he had no idea how to apply the information to the exam. His mother contacted the school, super angry, asking how he could possibly fail the exam. You could tell she was on the verge of saying, "How could he fail when I made him that entire index card?" During quarantine, we had to institute a no parents in the room with you who liked to do schoolwork. The reason being, a 16-year-old girl and her mom would lie in bed together all class, and the mother could be heard telling her daughter exactly what every answer was. I had the girl in the previous year, and her homework was always leagues better than what she ever did in class. That explained a whole lot. I'm the kid. It was a packet each student had to fill out about where they were born. I was born in Hawaii, but I really didn't know enough to fill out the assignment. Mind you, I was in the 2nd grade, so my handwriting was an eyesore. I asked my mom, who had way better handwriting than me, to help me out. I thought she would tell me things about where I'm from, and that I myself would fill out the packet. She took the packet and my pencil and started to fill it out. I knew my teacher would know that I didn't do it, but I was really shy back then. I still am now, but it's not nearly as bad as it used to be. I went to school the next day really nervous, expecting to get caught. Sure enough, after it was graded, there was a note written on the front of it. It said something along the lines of, "This is not your handwriting. Who did this?" scared the living shit out of me, but there was no further mention of it. A homework sheet that I had already corrected and uploaded back to the school website/system for the student to see feedback. Mom hassled me about wanting to do the corrections. Apparently I hadn't done it. Multiple emails, phone calls, and finally a phone call from the principal, all because the mom wanted feedback. The kid could have easily downloaded the feedback from her personal account. Mom didn't have access to the feedback, as the system is set up to make sure kids have some autonomy in their work habits. This is high school, by the way. Finally, I just emailed Mom the correction just to stop her annoying me. Note, our system is incredibly easy to use. The primary schools in my area all use the same system. Click on the task, big friendly button saying download teacher feedback. Pretty easy to tell in art class. One day, the student can't draw a square properly, and the next day he comes in with a perfectly rendered three-dimensional still life with depth and shading. Separate incident, and even more egregious, a girl didn't even hand in a year-end project herself. She spent many classes refusing to do any work in class. Then after the project is due, someone else I've never seen comes by with an amazing drawing and said that the student drew this and wants to submit it. How stupid do you think I am? As an 8-year-old, I once built a Buzz the Wire game for a science competition at school. I got disqualified because I clearly didn't build it myself. Still get angry thinking about this. That's annoying, because it's not a complicated thing to make. Connect one end of a buzzer to a battery that's in series with the obstacle wire, and then have the wire connecting the buzzer to a metal wand that needs to navigate around the obstacle wire. Not a teacher, but there was a kid who turned in a life-size cannon for our history fair and shot it in 7th grade. The next year he turned in a hovercraft he could ride on for the science fair. I'm almost 30, so this was more than 15 years ago. A school chum of mine once wrote a perfect, amazing, compelling story for a French creative writing class. Only problem was they couldn't read it. Her mother had been forcing their au pair to do all of the friend's homework and the email to her. The mother never realized the friend knew zero French because she actually wasn't learning it. We were in boarding school. The French au pair took care of the friend's little brother back home. She had never met friend and assumed friend could read. Friend's report is infamous for how awful it was to have heard. I felt both terrible for her and impressed that no one had caught her before this report. Not a teacher, but there was a guy in my A-level ICT class in school who was the teacher's son. Our coursework was to create an access database for a school library system and document all the functionality of it and how it was created. He got full marks on it and was even audited by the board, and got away with it. He admitted to everyone in the class he didn't lift a finger to do it. He went on to do law at university and is now a barrister. I guess if I ever end up in court, I can throw that in his face. I'm not a teacher, but as a research chemist, I judged a high school student science fair a few years ago. One of the most elaborate projects was clearly done by the students' parents, both of which are professors at the local university. As I stood there, the student stumbling and fumbling as she tried to explain the complicated experimental model and the statistics she'd done, but didn't seem to understand, I could tell immediately that the parents did the project. They kept interrupting to clarify what the student was trying to say. I was embarrassed for the student because her parents were obviously copter parents who were pressuring their child to excel at a subject that she clearly had little grasp of. Fortunately, the other judges seemed to agree that the project didn't even place in the top 10. English teacher. One university's bachelor student kept asking me to take it and do it at home. Okay, but that sends my antenna into examine this one's work closely mode. Comparing his at-home work to his in-class work clearly showed a major difference, as in 2/20 in class, 18/20 at home. I finally parked him to one side of my desk and nannied him through an exercise, taking away his phone 4 times, shutting down attempts to get friends to help him, keeping his nose to the grindstone. Score 3 out of 20. Then the lockdown hit, and everything was done at home. His final, Write 200 to 250 words on this subject. Exam came back 97% plagiarized, and the one sentence he wrote to connect the two paragraphs had 3 faults in 7 words. Final score for the year, 0.3/20. I had never given a student a grade that low before. Then he had the gall to try to appeal to my better nature to inflate his grade. 10% on the first term in-class exam, 15% on the second term, mostly in-class lab report, 90% without a draft or writing a single coherent word at school. On the third term research investigation, I don't know what his mom's plan is for senior year when we have to verify authenticity with checkpoints and things, but she wrote a great report. Every year I assign a problem the first day of calculus to understand how the students handle stress, complete work, and their skill level. If an engineer sees it, they will solve it using material the students don't understand. Last year, I got a new record of engineers doing their children's homework. I got an angry email from a parent, MS is CS from MIT, saying I shouldn't start with Calc 3. I completed the problem and cited my sources in a pre-calculus book. He then tried to hack my website with their homework problems. It also took 2 days to write 5 lines of Python for his daughter's homework. He's the head of the coding division for an aerospace company. He had a blog post about how overcoming obstacles leads to growth. I hope his daughter gets to leave when she is 18 and find out who she really is. We were in quarantine for the final quarter of the year. I had a student transfer to my roster for the first day of it. He completed all of his assignments and got 100s on all his tests. I got him again this year. Kid can barely read, can't form a grammatically correct sentence, and accomplishes nearly nothing. A guy I went to high school with came in one day with a presentation you expect in a boardroom. I can't even do this thing justice with words. Everyone else's project looked like shit in comparison. The teacher asked how we went about doing this and outright said his dad is a graphic artist and he did the visuals for him. I can't remember now the outcome of this, but I distinctly remember all my classmates bitching for fair treatment. This is a story my little brother told me. So his German class had to write an assignment, and there was a girl who just wrote in English, and then ran the whole thing through Google Translate with German. But when she turned it in, she saw it wasn't German she picked in Google Translate, but Dutch. When she realized, it was already too late. The teacher wasn't mad, just disappointed. If you absolutely have to cheat, can't you at least do it right? When they fail, their parents come whining about how well done the assignment was and how they checked on it and seem to know more about it than their child. The 7-year-old misbehaved and was assigned writing lines to fill a whole sheet of paper with the phrase, "I will not be bad," or something like that. The next day, the page came back completely full but written in beautiful, cursive handwriting. The 7-year-old could barely print his name at the time. One of the girls in my class was the daughter of one of my colleagues. They had to do an assignment in duos, the night before the deadline. The other parents emailed to tell me the teacher's mom had done all the work, casting aside anything the girls had wanted to do themselves. I didn't have the balls to confront her, but the worst part was that it wasn't the best project handed in to me by the class. Literally everything half of my distance learners have turned in this year. 4th graders don't know how to copy and paste, but we've gotten a lot of that, straight from Wikipedia. We also have a distance family that are Jehovah's Witnesses, mom types, love letters to Jehovah, anytime there's a written assignment. Teaching 7-year-olds. They were meant to do their spelling homework every weekend and had to hand it in Monday morning. One Monday, a dad brings his daughter in. They forget to take the homework home last week, so he drops her off and says, "If you can't give it to me now, I'll take it home and do it." I gave him the homework sheet, and he hands it in when he comes to pick her up. The worst thing is, he didn't even do all the exercises. I teach English to primary and middle schoolers, and the most obvious sign is when I ask the students to present or even read their own work, and they struggle.